If someone told you that the people who abandoned you as a child would one day return demanding millions of dollars, would you believe them? Because I didn't. Honestly. For most of my life, I convinced myself that my parents were dead. Not because anyone told me they were, because believing they had died hurt less than believing they had chosen to leave me. And for 21 years, I carried that pain alone. Until one ordinary Tuesday morning, when the past I thought was buried forever suddenly came back. And trust me, nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Hello, everyone. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional family dramas, shocking betrayals, and satisfying endings, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 26 years old, and the first clear memory I have from my childhood is an airport. I was only 5 years old, too young to understand what was happening, too young to recognize fear, too young to know that my entire life was about to change. I still remember holding my stuffed dinosaur. Its name was Rex. My mother had bought it for me when I was 3. At least, that's what she told me. We had been sitting near gate 18 for what felt like forever. People moved around us. Suitcases rolled across the floor. Announcements echoed through the terminal, and my parents kept telling me, "We'll be right back." At first, I believed them, because children believe their parents. That's what children do. Minutes became hours. Hours became panic. I remember asking strangers, "Have you seen my mommy?" I remember crying. I remember hugging Rex so tightly my arms hurt. And eventually, I remember falling asleep in those uncomfortable airport chairs, completely alone. When I woke up, a woman I'd never seen before was sitting beside me. She wore an airport employee badge, and honestly, she probably saved my life. Her name was Linda Harris. To this day, I still remember her kind eyes. She gently asked, "Sweetheart, where are your parents?" And I gave the answer that still breaks my heart. They said they'd come back, but they never did. Instead, Linda found something tucked inside my tiny backpack. A note, written in my mother's handwriting. I didn't understand the words then, but years later, I memorized every sentence. It said, "We can't do this anymore. Please take care of him." No names, no explanations, nothing. Just 6 words that destroyed an entire childhood. Police searched for weeks, then months. But my parents had disappeared. No relatives came forward. No phone calls. Nothing. It was as though they had vanished from the earth. And eventually, the system labeled me exactly what I had become: abandoned. The next few years were difficult. Foster homes, new schools, new faces, new disappointments. Some families were kind, others weren't, but through it all I never stopped asking the same question: why wasn't I enough? Honestly, that's the question abandoned children ask themselves. Not because they deserve blame, because children don't know where else to place the pain. Then when I was 10 years old, everything changed. A retired high school principal named George Walker entered my life. George wasn't rich, he wasn't young, and he definitely wasn't looking for attention, but somehow, he saw something in me, and for reasons I'll never understand, he chose me. George officially adopted me when I was 11, and from that day forward, he became my father in every way that mattered. He taught me how to ride a bike, helped with homework, cheered at baseball games, and every birthday, he reminded me, blood creates relatives, love creates family. Honestly, those words saved me. George never lied to me about my past, but he also never allowed my pain to define me. Whenever I asked why my parents left, he always answered the same way: "Their decision says everything about them, not about you." And slowly, I started believing him. Years passed. I worked hard, really hard, because somewhere deep inside me, I promised myself something. I promised that no matter what happened, I would never become a victim. I would become proof that broken beginnings don't determine your future. By 26, I had built a successful software company. Nothing flashy, nothing famous, but enough to live comfortably, enough to make George proud, and honestly, that was all that mattered. Then 3 years ago, George passed away. Losing him nearly destroyed me, because losing the man who chose you feels different. And after his funeral, I felt completely alone again. Just like that 5-year-old boy at the airport. But life slowly moved forward. Until one Tuesday morning, a day that started like every other day. Coffee, emails, meetings, normal. Then my assistant entered my office, holding a certified envelope. This was marked urgent. At first, I assumed it was another business matter. Maybe taxes, maybe contracts. Nothing unusual. But the moment I opened it, my blood turned cold. Because written across the first page were words I never expected to see. Notice of civil lawsuit, and below that, 2 names I hadn't seen in 21 years. Michael Carter, Rebecca Carter, my parents, the people who abandoned me, the people who disappeared, the people I thought I'd never see again. They weren't dead, they weren't missing, and unbelievably, they weren't contacting me to apologize. They were suing me for $5.5 million. And the reason they gave was so unbelievable. I honestly thought it had to be a joke for nearly 10 minutes. I just stared at the lawsuit papers, certain I was misunderstanding something. Because surely, people who abandon their child don't disappear for 21 years and suddenly return demanding money. Right? But unfortunately, reality doesn't always make sense. I read the documents again, then again, and honestly, the more I read, the angrier I became. According to the lawsuit, my biological parents claimed that I owed them compensation because they had sacrificed opportunities to raise me during the first 5 years of my life. 5 years. They wanted millions because they had done the bare minimum required of parents. And apparently, their attorney argued that my financial success was only possible because of the foundation they had provided. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. Then I noticed something even stranger. The lawsuit mentioned details about my company that weren't public, information only someone closely following my life would know. That realization sent chills down my spine, because suddenly, one terrifying question entered my mind. Had they been watching me, I immediately called my lawyer. Her name was Sarah Bennett, and honestly, Sarah was brilliant. After reviewing the documents, she removed her glasses and simply said, "Ethan, this case is ridiculous." Then she paused. "But something about this doesn't feel random." And she was right, because people don't suddenly sue their abandoned child after 21 years without a reason. Something else was happening. Something bigger. Over the next week, Sarah began investigating, and what she discovered shocked both of us. My biological parents were drowning in debt. Massive debt. Their home was in foreclosure, creditors were pursuing them, and apparently, several failed business ventures had left them desperate. They weren't coming back because they loved me. They were coming back because they needed money. Honestly, that part didn't even hurt. Not anymore. Because by then, George had taught me something important. Some people love people. Other people love opportunities. And my biological parents clearly loved opportunities. But then Sarah found something much worse. Someone had been requesting information about me for years. Not recently, years. Private investigators, background searches, public records, social media archives. Someone had quietly followed my life. And eventually, we traced those requests back to one person, my biological mother, Rebecca Carter. For 21 years, she knew I was alive, she knew where I was, she knew I had graduated, she knew I started my company. And despite knowing all of that, she never called, never wrote, never apologized. Nothing. Until money entered the picture. Honestly, that discovery hurt more than the abandonment itself. Because as a child, I always imagined there had to be a reason. Maybe they were sick, maybe they had died, maybe they regretted everything. But now, the truth was worse. They simply chose not to come back. Then Sarah discovered something that completely changed the case. Apparently, my parents had another child, a daughter, my half-sister, Emily, 20 years old, and according to records, she had no idea I existed, none, which meant my parents had hidden me from her for 2 decades. I felt sick. Because suddenly, there was another victim in this story. A young woman who had spent her entire life living inside a lie, and honestly, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Then one Friday afternoon, I received an unexpected email. Subject line, I think we're related. My heart stopped. Because the sender's name was Emily Carter, I opened it immediately, and what I read nearly brought me to tears. She wrote, I accidentally found old documents while helping Mom organize paperwork. I discovered your adoption records. I had no idea you existed. I'm so sorry. Please believe me. I didn't know. And then came the sentence that broke my heart. You deserved better. For 21 years, nobody from my biological family had defended me. Nobody. Until a sister I'd never even met. A week later, Emily and I met for coffee. And honestly, I expected awkwardness. But the moment she saw me, she started crying. Not fake tears. Real tears. Then she hugged me and whispered, I'm so sorry they did this to you. And for the first time, someone connected to my past actually acknowledged my pain. Then Emily revealed something terrifying. She had overheard our parents talking. And apparently, the lawsuit wasn't even their idea. Someone else was behind it. Someone far more dangerous. Someone who believed I owed the family everything. And when Emily told me that person's name, I couldn't believe it. Because the mastermind behind the entire lawsuit wasn't my parents, it was my grandfather. The same grandfather who never once tried to find me. The same man I assumed was dead. And according to Emily, he hated me for a reason I still didn't understand. But the truth he was hiding would destroy the entire family. For several minutes after Emily told me about our grandfather, I couldn't speak. Because according to everything I'd believed for 21 years, my grandfather had either disappeared or passed away. But apparently, not only was he alive, he had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. And somehow, he hated me. A child he had never even known. Honestly, none of it made sense. Emily sat across from me, nervously twisting her coffee cup. Then she quietly said, There's something else. Apparently our grandfather, Richard Carter, had controlled the entire family for decades. My parents feared him. Everyone feared him. And according to Emily, he constantly repeated the same sentence. That boy ruined everything. That boy. Me. But why? I had been 5 years old. What could a 5-year-old possibly destroy? Then Emily handed me an old photograph she'd secretly taken from our grandfather's study. At first glance, it looked ordinary, until I noticed the date, and the people standing in it, because beside my mother was another man, not my father. And suddenly, everything changed. Emily looked terrified. Ethan, I think Dad isn't your biological father. I froze, completely. Because honestly, that possibility had never crossed my mind, not once. Immediately, Sarah launched another investigation. DNA records, birth certificates, old court filings, and 3 weeks later, the truth finally emerged. The man who abandoned me, Michael Carter, was never my biological father. He had discovered the truth shortly before I turned 5. My mother had had an affair years earlier, and when my grandfather learned about the scandal, he became obsessed with protecting the family name. Instead of facing humiliation, they erased me. Like I had never existed. I wasn't abandoned because I was unwanted. I was abandoned because adults were protecting their secrets. And honestly, that realization nearly broke me. Because all those years, I blamed myself, when none of it had ever been my fault. Then Sarah discovered something even bigger. 21 years earlier, a trust fund had been created in my name, by my real biological father, a man named Thomas Reed. Apparently, he never knew I existed. He died in a car accident when I was 7. But before his death, his family learned about me, and after years of legal battles, the money had remained untouched, waiting for me. Suddenly, everything made sense. My grandfather had known. My mother had known. And once they discovered the trust had finally been released, they panicked. The lawsuit wasn't about love. It wasn't about regret. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about inheritance. They wanted the money. The courtroom hearing finally arrived, And honestly, seeing my parents for the first time in 21 years felt surreal. They looked older, smaller, almost unfamiliar. But one person immediately caught my attention. Richard Carter, my grandfather, 81 years old, still cold, still proud, still convinced he controlled everyone. Throughout the hearing, their attorney argued that I owed my biological family support, that success should be shared, that family responsibilities mattered. And honestly, I stayed silent. Because Sarah had something much stronger than arguments. She had truth. Then she presented the evidence, the abandonment records, the note, the financial investigations, the hidden trust, the DNA results, and finally, proof that Michael Carter wasn't even my biological father. The courtroom became completely silent. My mother's face turned white. My grandfather looked shocked because for the first time in his life his secrets were no longer protected. Then something happened nobody expected. Emily stood up. She had come to support me. And through tears she said, "He's not the one who should be ashamed, you are." And honestly, those words hit harder than any legal argument. Because they came from the daughter they had raised. The judge dismissed the lawsuit, completely, and then ordered my parents to pay legal fees. But honestly, the victory wasn't financial. The victory was freedom, because for the first time since I was 5 years old, I stopped asking, why wasn't I enough? Because finally, I knew the answer. I had always been enough. They simply weren't capable of giving me what I deserved. After the hearing, my mother approached me. Tears filled her eyes, and quietly she whispered, "I'm sorry, honestly." For years I dreamed of hearing those words. But when they finally came, they felt empty. Not because I hated her. Because some wounds need more than words, I simply nodded and walked away. Not out of anger, but out of peace. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes, forgiveness simply means refusing to carry the pain anymore. Today, Emily and I remain close. She's no longer just my half-sister. She's family, real family, the kind built on truth, not secrets. And every year on my birthday, we visit George Walker's grave together, because without him, neither of us would have found each other. Before we leave, I always place a small toy dinosaur beside his headstone, Rex, the same dinosaur I held at the airport when I was 5 years old, because George taught me something I'll never forget. Blood creates relatives, love creates family. And honestly, he was right. The end moral of the story: the people who abandon you do not determine your worth. Real family isn't defined by blood, wealth, or last names. It's defined by love, truth, and the people who choose to stay.